None? Good? All right. So next steps, then we have industrial site prep discussion. We'll cover an example that is worth considering, and then there's some things that we'll want to talk about. And I think Jonathan Bueno is supposed to be joining us here after a bit too.
Perfect.
Because he's going to need to weigh in and maybe assist with.
So you're doing it virtually?
No.
Where did that ever come from?
I don't know. I'm so crazy. I'm a crazy guy.
We'll talk about the Economic Development Project Fund planning, just give an update on where we are on that, and then go into exec session and give update on some projects for you. So, all right, so just to reiterate what the Economic Development Board situation has been, we do have it currently in our ordinances. It's there. It says 18 members. There's prescription to it and everything. And in 21, the strategic plan evaluated that board structure, took feedback from council members, from stakeholders and all that. And so the recommendation came out and said, let's change this. And then the review by staff as well as management with council at a workshop in September of 21 came out and said, here's a recommendation. What do y'all want to do with it? We did say we support it and still support it. Going from 18 to 13. The prescribed structure under a 13 board member makeup would be 8 would represent the public sector and be appointed by public sector. 3 members of the ED committee, that's you 3, and any future members that would be on that committee. Then you'd have 5 appointments representing manufacturing, 2 from that sector, service sector, retail, real estate, and then financial service industries. The private sector would be represented by growth partners, and then you'd have representation from the workforce development and education area with the president or their designee of Winthrop and York Tech. So ex officio county manager, York County Chamber of Regional Chamber of Commerce or their designee, the Catawba Indian Nation chief or their designee, and then the Clemson Extension agribusiness agent. And that was something wasn't initially looked at, but then through the committee, and you may remember this, we had some discussion about, well, how does agribusiness get represented? And so we put that in here, and I think that covers the gamut of folks. It takes it down to 13. So it's really, next steps, and I think some question would be, has been asked, well, what's the benefit of an advisory board? We have different boards and commissions in the county. From economic development standpoint, if you look at the way they can assist with the visioning and the implementation planning, and again, public side's in there with private side, so it's all comprehensive and hopefully engaging across the collaborative spirit and looking at our achievements and failures, if you want to even call it that. There's going to be times where that happens, hopefully not many, but that's one benefit. There's the leveraging of the existing and new relationships that board members bring for what we could hopefully have as common goals. How do we do things for common good here? Mitigate any excessive politicalization, say that 5 times, of any economic development activities. And so that can kind of maybe temper some things that might be going on in the community that the board can help support with leadership. Straw man poll role for the public reaction. Like you could kind of test some things as it relates to what maybe changes as proposed by council or community. Conduit for driving the resource, knowledge, and support from the private side. Again, our economy is built on private investment, private sector doing things with support, and public sector doing things too. But when you combine that and drive it in, it's good. Then the ambassadors. Everyone's an ambassador once you kind of become deputized and more knowledgeable about economic development. It is a responsibility and an obligation and a duty if you are on that board. And I think if people take it serious, it can be good for York County. And then communications with community stakeholders. We got a lot of stakeholders in this county, different levels, municipality, nonprofits, and everything. This helps with that. And that's really what kind of thought there. So I guess from next steps, it's really what does the committee want to recommend out if there's action to be taken, and go from there.
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing this up, and this to me is important from a lot of different perspectives. One of them is to make sure that we have that sounding board to bounce off things, to ideas that I think that there is a value in that partnership to understand what that we're gonna get from feedback and feel that feedback from them. Again, I think a lot of times the more feedback we can get in certain situations, the better value of an answer and a response to what is the right thing to do is good, especially in this. And that component is very important. But I don't know, I'm gonna let you guys go ahead and talk. What's your thoughts on that?
Me or Allison?
Yeah,
I want
Allison.
to ask a question
Yeah.
before we do that. But so when we originally talked about this, there were a couple of ex officio maybe who never showed up. Was that, I think, Catawba Indian Nation?
Yeah,
was
they
it-
didn't
were a
show up
no-show?
on a regular basis. They were absent.
Who was there? Another one that was not active?
We've always had, Catawba Indian Nation represented on our board. Goes way back.
Goes way back, but
Why did they not
Jackie-
show up?
They had changed in some of the
Well, yeah, they've
positions.
had some changes out there,
Jackie
The chief
came-
never really ever showed up. He was never the ex officio. It was somebody that was designated in the economic development.
This one, over this one.
They have an economic development office over there,
Yeah.
so that's changed quite a bit. So
Mhm.
there is an economic development entity now.
So the unique thing about the Catawba Indian Nation, they're changing. They're doing some things that are a little bit more proactive, I guess, at least on paper.
They got
that we
revenue
hear.
coming in.
Well, they also have a
Well,
police
they-
As a
force now.
sovereign,
They've changed their structure.
yeah. The unique thing is, my understanding is a sovereign nation. Though, if we look at the value, it comes back to the county. Other
Yeah.
than they're could be a partner with us for many different things.
Lots of opportunities.
We get no revenue off anything they do,
Mm-hmm.
and they have limited land out there. Honestly, it's probably more on the tourism side of the parks and that correlation. So there's that value of maybe doing more with them and engaging, but. Hadn't really seen. The only other one, there was one other or two other people that really didn't show on any regular basis that we
And-
got rid of their
And right now, if y'all go forward with the board though, your recommendation would be to not or to include, because I'll just say, they've had a lot over the last 18 months that's transformed out there. And just the thought, if you are going to have a board, to include them as an ex officio, I think.
It'd be
you know,
ex officio.
Has some merit, just to see. I'm not saying that they would show up. We've been stood up many times for lunch, stuff like that. I get all that in the past, but probably worthwhile to still put that olive branch out there with them on that, or extend the offer.
Sure.
The recommendation is ex officio.
Watts.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, why was the board disbanded? Why are we even revisiting? I mean, I think we should have a
So-
board, but I don't understand what was the reason behind
So in
disbanding.
2019, we worked on a public-private partnership. There was a need to reset the board at kind of a crossroads period. So and then the P3 didn't get support, got tabled, never came back up. Then COVID hit, never was reset, and then the strategic plan was undertaken during COVID, and we came back with this recommendation. And in September 21, the workshop we had in this room with council, we brought this up and said, okay, we need to do something with it because it never got reset. And what does council want to do? Just kind of a hot potato. Nobody wanted to make a decision on it.
So was it reset? Were you resetting because you were struggling with the purpose of the board?
Yeah, I'm going to add some color to that. In 19, I thought it was later to that, the P3 thing, that just blew up. That was ugly. That thing completely blew up. And that's why I think it went away, was that blow up. But you only have 3 board members that were on at that time, right?
What is P3?
Public-private partnership.
Oh,
We
the
talked about
public-private
combining.
partnership. Yeah, okay.
That got tabled and it didn't get brought up again because we went for a first reading to change the ordinance.
Yeah, I remember that, but I mean, it was,
And so when that didn't go forward, we also needed to move to at least, okay, then make an
do
action on
something
the
with the board,
board because
yeah.
that's on our ordinances. So when you look at doing something, because it's still on our ordinances to have a board, the recommendation, because of the strategic plan and some discussion was, all right, let's at least shrink this board back, but still be intentful with the structure. is what we
So
did.
David,
Yeah.
if I could put you on the spot, or Jason or Teresa, either one. If you had to name 3 priorities of the board, this new board that's gonna be formed, what would be 3 priorities of the board?
I think it's continued engagement with you all and making sure we're in alignment on what's good for the county and supporting county council and supporting the community doing the right thing. We have a strategic plan, folks, that been limited action on, and we've started to address some of them through council, but also there's other stuff on the list that needs to start being worked on, like marketing, communications, probably more collaborations with other organizations in the community if it's on some of it on that promotional side, if it's product development, that kind of stuff. So there's that effort. I think tapping into and staying close to the private sector more, especially some of these prescribed people who are close to the manufacturing, service, retail. The other is, I think, information sharing and things that we can bring people in this community up to speed on. If it's resource partners that are at the state level, federal level, regional level, making sure that everybody gets on the same page. So when we're talking about building coalitions or partnerships out of York County to take advantage of certain things happening, or go and address issues across the area, that can help. Hopefully that helps answer.
So bridge with council, marketing, and information sharing. Are those the 3?
Yeah, and then I think other things as it relates to the whole array of.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would add the ambassadors is really key too. So when we have prospects and companies that come to visit York County, having a group of engaged business leaders, community leaders that we can call on to participate and help tell our story, that can speak to business leader to business leader. I think having that group of people at the ready is important too.
I agree.
That's probably the biggest advantage.
People
Yeah,
like.
And that's why they want to be on the board too, because then they get to make connections with new businesses coming here too, so it's a.
Now, I'll say
win-win
this,
situation.
this is important to emphasize. Incentive deals and all the things related to that's your decision still. That is not a board decision. We may, in the past, we have highlighted at a different level than what we talked to you all in executive session, but at high level, hey, we're dealing with these type of deals and things that give character and color to our deal flow. Stuff you've seen down in Chester County, very similar to what we would talk about. So it's keeping people informed, keeping people engaged, keeping people aware that we've got great things happening here, or if there's challenges, how do we solve them?
Yeah, agreed. So if we're going to get a motion on this thing, I think it would just be.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Is there any concern?
Yes.
Okay. Can we get that out on the table?
So, I'm not in favor overall, because there are a couple little parts of it that I don't care for. Flip back to like who the people would be that are on the board, like what those roles are. I'm not in favor of the growth partners, and I think this board has a lot of conflicts of interest. So a few years back, one of the things that was proposed in specifically to my district was I had met with David. I'm telling y'all, I had met with David and economic development and county management because just to say, they said, what do you want in your district? And I said, I want a data center across from Allison Creek. I want a data center, and I want it to look good. I want it to be tucked in, but that's what I want. And a few months later, pretty much right away, but maybe that was a hope, a pipe dream. But so a few months later, something else came up, and that was to develop that and put, I think it was 17 different spec buildings on that property. And I want to tell you what a battle it was for me to get that stopped, because I wanted a data center, and I felt like we need to hold out. I believe if you take the first thing that comes along, that's a mistake a lot of times. And I don't know that we have an actual plan for the area. I've asked to see like an overlay of what should go where in the county. I'd like for everybody, every council member to look at their district and say, hey, this is appropriate for this, this is not, this is what I'd like to see. And I knew what I wanted to see there. And so it kind of went away, and then it came back up again. So they even cut the little road in beside the fire department, and so it was very frustrating for me. And of course, I would hear from David, and I hear from some of the growth partners, because they were all for it. And I think it's a mistake even for them to say, hey, we're just going to take the first thing that comes along, and not really pay attention to not to I don't want them to discount what a council person wants in their district and what the people may want and what they speak up for. So ultimately, I was able to say, I don't want that there. I told David Husband, that's just not, it's just not the appropriate thing. The neighbors were concerned about that, and ultimately, we have a
Allison, we're on an executive session.
Okay, so ultimately though, things work out the way they should. And so I just think we have to be more careful. And I think the growth partners pushing for things that, I mean, they're benefiting from those things. So I just see that kind of as a conflict of interest.
Yeah,
I don't want to get pressure from a growth partner to support something. I'm gonna give you another example, a more current example, and that's the SILFAB. And so the people in District 7, they're not interested in SILFAB, but the council people from that district are getting pressure from who would be the growth partners here. And so I think it becomes very political. I think it becomes, in some cases, people not working together, which is what you would like for this to look like. But I think it ends up with people working in conflict with each other. And so without seeing an economic development plan for the county and knowing what that is, what needs to go where, what should go where, it concerns me. It's concerned me from the start.
I guess from that perspective, and again, thank you for your feedback. I think I think a lot of times, at least to me, there's a lot of knowledge in that growth partner, and they may want something, but it doesn't mean that we do something, right? I think the value of the growth partner component is the experience that's on there, and how they can see where this business may fit into a overall growth pattern that they think would be good. Again, it's all recommendations. We're the ones that make the final decision, but there's a lot of very knowledgeable people in that group.
I don't disagree with that at all. I just don't want to be influenced by, I don't want to have the influence of a board pushing council, and because of that experience, you may think they outweigh what an individual council person or several council people think, and that's not necessarily the case.
Those were the concerns of the council in the past, where they shut down the P3. The point that Jason made, the benefit, that is to me the biggest upside you get in Greenville County and how they work theirs over there. It's that connection with, to help bring people in and talk to them.
Yeah.
That's the biggest benefit. And how you make sure that they don't cross over that line to get, and I'm not saying they did or didn't or anything like that, but the things Allison alludes to, because there was a large community movement against, you remember that term, against the P3. And that resulted in, rather than voting it down, it got just tabled and been revisited.
It didn't get this.
But I mean, that's the fine line to walk between where they stay in their lane on that. Is that a good way to say it, David? How would you describe that?
Yeah, I mean, any issue can have two sides to it. And how we look at those opportunities or challenges and work through them in a collaborative spirit. That's what this is focused on, is bringing people who have passion, who have interest, and maybe some self-serving. Like in the case of our utility friends, which Mark's in the back room, or if it was, the gas company, whoever, they want to have customers. Now, where they play a role and it brings value, right? There may be, there's territorial rights and they have the right to serve it. They're going to support things to happen. Does it always jive and maybe need discussion and collaboration to fit right? Yeah, of course. And
Well, I'd be
maybe
more
they'll
comfortable
bring it
if we were following a plan and they knew what the plan was and they supported that plan.
So I guess
I feel like that's like the first step that we've yet to do.
Well,
Because when you have a plan and then you say, okay, you're our growth partners right here and this is our plan, then we want you to support the plan. And at this point, there's not a plan.
so there's many different plans that we play off of. There's the strategic plan that talks about big picture. There's land use comp plan stuff that planning goes. There's some goals and plans that council has, financial plan. It's put it all together as best we can.
Let me say this about the plan. I completely hear your point about them crossing that line to where now they're trying to influence stuff that's too self-serving. I get that concern, but at the same time, we struggle to come up with a plan for the county where we're going to put apartments, over this and that stuff. I don't think you could really draw a map of the county that shows this is where we're going to put a data center, and this is where we're going to put warehouse and distribution. I just don't think that would ever be done, and if it was done, I can promise you the next thing come along will be different than laid out there. I mean, I think the focus on how do you keep the growth partners on the good side of what they need to be doing, with the understanding that I think David's exactly right. They're not in this for free. There's an upside to them, but there's also an upside to us as well. How do you keep them in that lane is the challenge, and that's what, if y'all can figure out how to do that or put some controls in there to get you some comfort with that, then I think it could be, to make those concerns move forward, because there's got to be a mutual benefit for having to be on that board. There's got to be. But I don't think, I just think, Allison, the idea of a comprehensive plan across the county where stuff's going to go, we'd never get it right. We never would.
Yeah, I just see a lot of benefit in having this board just because of the knowledge. Again, they're only for us, to me, it's a sounding board. We don't, we make our final decisions, but I think the expertise is really important, so.
They just carry a lot of weight. They carry a lot of weight in a couple different ways. And I think there's political pressure. I think that's the weight that they have. When you start, and it's not so much who's going to be the realtor or the financial service, and it's not that. It's the growth partners that carry a lot of weight.
So describe a growth partner to me right quick. Who's a growth partner? Are we
So
talking about York County Natural Gas?
So they are the utility partners, Duke,
Okay.
Co-op,
Okay.
gas
Emporium.
company, Comporium.
Gotcha, that's what I thought.
Construction.
Okay,
And there's
let
gonna
me
be-
So let me share this right quick. So last night I read something at council, you weren't there. Don't know if
I
you
was
listened.
watching.
So if you listened to what I said, if it made
Yeah.
any sense to you, I don't know. But I think sometimes in life, the difficult thing to do is to surround yourself with a group of people that aren't telling you what you want to hear, and they're telling you what you need to know. And when they're telling you what you need to know, that can be a little difficult. I understand what you're saying. There are 3 people out of 13 that could be a member of this group that may feel differently than you do, or I do, or Tom, or anybody else on council. But I think that's important to bring that perspective to the table. And then cumulatively, a group is going to decide what they think they need to present to us, which is a pretty diverse group too, to bring an idea to get it passed. So I think you need diversity. You need diversity in everything that we do. I won't even get off on too many tangents on that, but we need to involve more people in our decisions. It's no different. I'm not even say that. I think we need a diverse group, whether it's 13 or 18, whatever it is, to help us maximize our ability to make great decisions for York County. It's like an issue last night I said, if we asked everybody in the audience to weigh in on that topic, we would come out of that, maybe not changing our minds, but we would see this conversation differently. It happens
I
in my
understand.
business every day.
Listen, I'm very open-minded. I understand. I'm just saying that when you and y'all can vote yes, and I can be a no, and it's probably not going to make a difference on how this goes. I'm just saying that I feel like there's a lot of political weight when you put the growth partners on there.
But Allison, I use Paul as an example, okay? Everybody knows Paul.
Yeah.
He's going to be political, pushing something in his area regardless. He calls us up right now, and he will. Regardless if he's on there or not, he will do what he can to push his business, just as, Barnes will as well. They're all going to still do that. But I think what you could do in there, honestly, you have the ability in putting that ordinance together to put some kind of maybe controls in place to where they don't get over political or pushy on their particular businesses. If you're going to be our growth partners, these are the rules you have to play by. And maybe that affords you the ability to make sure that some of the things that you're concerned about, or that some other council might be concerned about, can be addressed by being a member on there. Whereas if they're not, they're free game to do what they're going to do, because they're going to make those calls and try to influence people just like they currently do with or without a board.
So we're talking about a voting member and a non-voting member. So you want to be a part of the discussion, but you don't want to be part of the discussion that's going to influence the decision, but yet they're going to be influencing decisions anyway. So is there a discussion about the
And the
3 private sectors being non-voting ex officio, or whatever you want to call them, and
I think it's
is there
The
is
challenge
this
is
even
that growth partners, and this was a decision made years ago, they are a financial contributor to economic
Oh,
development.
yeah.
So
they do fund our program.
they fund our program of work elements. They also sponsor things like going to Columbia and doing things that are of value. So
I'm not saying they're not valuable. I just don't want them to be a conflict of interest.
well, I think they have to walk a conflict of interest ethics line.
How
on
much
all
of a
that
big
they
deal
do.
to
He's
watch
a lobbyist.
David? How much of a big deal would it be for the, in your opinion, for the growth partners to be like Watson Leisure ex officio? Would that matter to them? Because the benefit
think
I
it-
see from them is being able to go to that dinner and meet these new contacts and try to develop some business relationships up front. And they can do that whether or not they vote or don't vote.
Yeah, I think it can dilute the message and the value that people say of.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that. I was just
Yeah,
saying,
I wouldn't,
Is
yeah,
that
I
an
would.
option?
I think there's a value in, absolutely.
More for a discussion point.
All right, well, I think, this has been a good, very good discussion. Do we have a motion on this one?
I'll make a motion that we approve the structure that's been laid out by the ED.
Okay. Do we have a second?
That'd be you.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All against?
Opposed.
That's a good thing. Respectfully accept, you know what I mean? That's the good thing about council.
I feel pretty strongly about it, and I have from the
Exactly.
beginning.
And this, this is all, yeah, absolutely, but thank you.
So I guess then to clarify, the idea is to take this recommendation, support of this recommendation to full council.
Correct.
And do you want us to draft up what that would look like as a change to the existing ordinance? Because
Correct.
that's what we're talking about,
That
a
is-
change to that structure. So at least the mechanics are done.
Present.
Well, and I would say that, right, I would recommend that you would present it
Yeah,
to
to
the
the full council,
Yeah.
so they can hear
Fully understand.
from you and they can ask questions. I think
Mhm.
that's the right way to do it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and run the ordinance changes, work with Kendra on getting that done, present it on probably second
Mhm.
meeting.
We've
in
done it
June.
before, we
Yeah,
do it again.
yeah.
All right.
And maybe when you do it, include some of the conversation that we just had on the benefits and the challenges, as Allison brought up, bring it up. Cause it's gonna come up anyway.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay,
You
great,
make
thank
sure
you.
it comes up.
It's gonna come up
Yeah, so
with some
go
better
ahead and get the
examples even.
elephant out of the room. Or bring it into the
Alright.
room.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is related to industrial site preparation. So in economic development, one of the challenges we have is we don't have ready-to-go sites. And by ready-to-go, they're in a marketing preparedness where it's all utilities there, maybe clear ownership, and it's cleared, like it's ready, it's visually ready to go. Speed to
Mhm.
market is key for a lot of what we do,
Yeah,
and maybe in a location that doesn't pose as many challenges of should we go there versus elsewhere. So
yeah.
in this case, the site, York County owns 31 acres approximately out in the East York Industrial Park. It's part of property area that the York Electric Co-op serves in their park. So where we know the site prep element of clearing a go ahead.
No, he just had a question. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm square on all this personally,
Okay.
but I'm reading the challenge and I'm just,
Yeah.
um.
So this is why
we don't have
Jonathan's
legal-
here.
We don't have, huh, pardon me?
Jonathan is here for a reason. Just to
Yeah, I just, you know. Yeah, thinking about a school that didn't get the grade.
Right.
And, what result that would have if we made an exception here, but we didn't make an exception there.
So, one of the things that's unique about
Mhm.
this topic here.
No way that goes.
So what we're talking about is if we were to evaluate a change to the existing ordinance
Yeah.
that gave exception to industrial site development and prep.
I'm with you. I'm just, as a council member, we didn't approve. York Prep already had teachers hired and training, $1.5 million of payroll, planning to move forward to have their school built for 2024. And we didn't give them a permit to grade. And so I think this is, I'm in favor of this. But when I look at the challenge and I think now about what we just went through, this could be a major, I would think, a major legal issue for us.
Well, I think, David, you want to finish up the discussion and then we can.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I guess we all see the value. Let me just stress one of the
Yeah.
elements here.
Yeah.
Right? And that is, so on the left is a 2015 picture, 2016. You can see in the park itself there are examples just land that's cleared. So it visually sends a appeal to a potential prospect. Hey, look, I can put my site there. I've even heard examples where counties that do this, they actually put posts out where your corners of your building would be, and so they can kind of, anyway, there's that potential. And then there's the unknowns. So when you talk about, oh, you have a development plan, well, this acreage here, when we've desktop evaluated it, folks have put down, okay, a larger building that could go one way. Maybe you do one building and have different sites, and then just take up front. And the interesting thing is when we did sort of a takeoff of what it would be to clear it, you're only impacting an estimated 17 to 19 acres out of 30 because the back just slopes off. You're not going to do anything. I say this saying that there's unique things on speculative site prep, not speculative building, but site prep, that it just helps us if we can say, here's the area, it's open for doing what can accommodate on this site. Okay. Now, hearing you loud and clear, this what precedent is set in this case, how does it impact industrial development, speculative site prepping versus the other areas? So I think the recommendation we would have as staff is, can we work with planning to craft some proposed changes to the ordinance that would articulate specifics of how the ordinance could change to accommodate this.
Yeah, you mean something specific for economic.
Yeah, it would have to be carved out right.
Well-
And if we can't, then that's the challenge we have.
Well, yeah, and I think the value, and again, I think y'all probably see, this is clustering or bringing together our industrial opportunities, where you got something right across the road, so it's consolidating it. It's addressing the rural farmland issue in regards to it's keeping things together because you got an industrial park right across the road. So there's a huge value opportunity here on this. I think that the thought of this, to me, would be the fact that we would just look to see, to have staff look into this, in essence. Okay? We're not saying we're going to do it, but just to look into this from an ordinance standpoint. That would just be my thought.
Our department working with planning could put some on paper and bring it back to this group.
Right. Go ahead.
Said, called Kendry. He wasn't able to make it tonight, but he wasn't aware of the of this. That's what he said. He said if you told him, he forgot about it. He wasn't aware of this. And he said he has some concerns.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I'm just one of three here. I support this. I think it's a great idea. But the York prep issue, for me personally, boy, that's a tough hurdle to cross. And even if we conveniently rewrote language to our benefit, I still have an issue with it. I like it. I think I'd love to see it ready to place
tied into
one,
Morningstar
2 or
as
3
well.
businesses on it. But
Part of the thing with Morningstar, we're not changing the rules for them.
well, that's another example.
And I mean, that was one with the school district, one of the reasons why, I won't say it was the reason why, but you have to be consistent.
Yeah.
And when you start making exceptions, whether it be
I'm with you.
self-serving or, we're going to be accused of all kinds of things. That was, I just wanted to get
But
Kendry's
now I would
thoughts on it.
stress this. So the reason why we're bringing this up is Mark and the co-op have resource funds and have
Saw that.
supported efforts that go to site prep towards economic development. Mark, maybe you want to
Can I
say.
just say a couple things?
Yeah.
And Watts, I appreciate you bringing that up, because I can see your concern there for sure. And Allison, I hear your concerns as well. Just a quick mention, the county owns this property because you got funds from the co-op to buy that, and Allison, you got funds from the co-op to buy half of the data center sites you want. So again, we're involved with economic development because we're concerned about residential growth, as you all are. It helps us obviously to sell electricity, but it also helps our load factor. So anytime we can serve anything at night or first thing in the morning, we haven't had a rate increase in 10 years. That keeps rates low or stable for everybody, for Teresa Curtis at her house. So you appreciate that. And then if we make money, this year we gave back $2.6 million back to our members in the form of capital credits. So I hear Allison's concern about the growth partners, and if we've pushed too hard in the past, I apologize for that, but we're just trying to do what we can to make the county good. And going back to my days working with Mark Ferris and Teresa, as the residential, we need industry. As long as the tax base is what it is, And the tax assessment ratio, you know, I think we need industry in this county to help, you know, fund schools and that sort of thing. So, but if there are some concerns about that, I get that. We just think riding through the park, it's hard to show. And again, 25 years ago, companies would come spend a day and a half with us, we'd take them to dinner, we'd visit neighborhoods, we have a good, you know, now they're here, what, 2 or 3 hours, David?
If that.
You know, if they can't even see the site or they can't even get out there and look at it, then they're just looking for a reason to mark it off and keep going, so to speak. So I think that hurts.
Well, let me ask this question.
Sure.
Short of grading it, can't you thin it?
We've done that before. I have to refer back to the folks at ESP,
I mean,
but we can't
can
clear. We can cut some trees, but we can't
Yeah,
take it all the way down to
no,
the stumps.
No, yeah, but you could clear it, I mean, clean it out.
Yes, there's
right?
been some bush hogging and stuff that
Yeah.
just kind of cleans it up. But you can see when there's only one area here, and that's even building out right
Right.
here. So
But you understand my issue.
yeah, no,
And
I do.
I mean,
No,
that's gonna be a tough
I
one for me,
appreciate
I'm
you
not
bringing
gonna
that up.
lie
I
to
didn't
you.
realize that. So
I think Paul's in because I figured everybody liked Paul.
what's that, Howard?
One reason I said Paul's in for everybody liked Paul. So don't report back that I threw one of the Buster thing.
So I think considering, you know, the conversation here in regards to this thing, I think this is probably something that we should then probably table at this point. Maybe have,
Run through legal.
run this through legal at this point. And, you know,
if we get favorable, at least look at some language, maybe Jonathan and I can put on paper and just say, does this fly? Does this look good or pass the test? And then we can come back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think to me, you know, I've heard in the concerns here, you know, and again, are very valid concerns. I think tabling it and referring this to legal would be the way to go on this one here.
I think we have to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep,
Appreciate you bringing it to
yeah,
us.
yeah,
And I wish I felt differently, but I'm not a maverick, that's for sure.
yeah.
So the next topic on the agenda, and then we'll go into executive session. If y'all want to talk about project updates. So we touched on this at the workshop last month. The Economic Development Project Development Fund, and I changed the name to, it is the specific name in the ordinance of how it's written. Started in 16 to support goals of the strategic plan for the county. And when we looked at this with council at the time, it was to look at an efficient way to fund strategic efforts, the investments. We're looking at it as investments, not just in expenditures. It's taking money and investing in something to get value. With council approval is required, okay? So the balance, as it states, last month was 2.9 million, grown that significantly. Probably gonna grow significantly again. I'm working with folks in county to look at projections a little bit there and see where we're headed. Then investment-wise, what we've done, so again, the 77 Alliance, which that's not been typically what we've kind of focused on with this, but that's what council at the time approved. So it may be something to come back and look at, is that something we want to continue or fund that out of our other operations, because that's what we do with the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. But the chamber in their workforce development initiative at $100,000 per year for 3 years, I think that is in front of you all now in the budget request. So that is a workforce development focus.
Yeah,
We
that's
talked
one we
about
had
that.
we had approved last year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just to emphasize that, bring that back in front of you.
Yep.
Now, as was asked by Chairwoman at the workshop,
Yeah.
come back with, and Watts, you also supported this, come back with a recommended plan on how we can roll out and start investing some of these funds, because they're building. So we've been working on it, and it's still in process. There's things that we still got to flush out and kind of talk as management and talk maybe with some of the leadership before we come to a full workshop again.
Yep.
I think it needs to be a full workshop where we roll out this plan. But I can tell you the buckets that we're looking at for project-focused work is industrial land development. So that right now there's some ideas out there, some maybe considerations that y'all are aware of. But the reality is that's not pressing right there in front of us, but it's something that we may want to consider, and there's defined approaches that we could look at with maybe some desired needs of funds committed at some point in the near future. don't know if that recommendation's there immediately now because that's not knocking at our door, like open door for us to consider, but we'll lay out a plan and how we can approach land development from a acquisition and development. If once we secure some land, we'll have some plans
What
for
about
that.
defined industries too? The
What's
type
that?
of industries that we want in York County that are gonna generate tax revenue.
So-
Can we even go a little deeper and define those industries, like chip manufacturers and?
Yeah, that's probably more on our marketing side, and there's some things that we'll update you on that front coming up. There was some
Because
things
what I'm
we talked
thinking
about.
is, if you're doing mini grants, basically is what you're talking about, right? Like I have a client here in York County that wants to get into the battery business. Okay, that's probably a good one to fund a mini grant, because he's gonna start small and it's gonna be a probably 200, 300, 400 person employer group.
Right.
Right, that type of initiative. So I'm saying, maybe we look at specific types of businesses,
Right.
because we don't want a warehouse
Right.
and distribution, because it's not gonna generate any taxes. So
Yeah.
selfishly, we want businesses that are high-paying jobs, they're, reputable businesses that get connected in the community, and they create taxes.
So we can talk about that under other considerations, target market
Yeah,
studies.
I would say that.
But let-
Okay.
And if you remember back to the workshop that we did, I talked about those targets,
Mhm.
and there's things there that we can go over again with you, Watts, about
I remember.
and council where we might be headed, especially with some new companies that are coming our way.
Mhm.
Also, some things that we'll update you with related to marketing and communications planning that we're working on with
Mhm.
some others in the community, and I'll update you a little bit later on that. But to focus on this, the next area is economic development project grants.
Mhm.
This would be a program developed where you'd be reimbursing someone for their expenses, and targeted groups would be able to apply for these grants. And think of this as a group of companies that are certain quality type, so qualified type, I should say, like still the manufacturing, still the office, back office, regional headquarters type,
Mhm.
but also they may not be ones we incentivize with the fee in lieu. They're below, a 10 million or 5 million, whatever that threshold is. I think we have a good idea based on what we talked about before, but below that threshold, but they're still going to add a good number of jobs.
Mhm.
And similar to the state grant program, where they make an investment, let's say they clear a site. Well, that's an improvement to an asset that maybe there's a reimbursement grant that we can give them up to a certain amount of that cost. So it would be approved, but there would need to be a certain amount we set aside of this full fund
Mhm.
to support the economic development project grant, okay?
Mhm.
And we'll recommend what that would
Okay.
be. Second would be the strategic initiative grants, and I say this with intent and purpose with workforce development, as I highlighted the chambers
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
And then the small business and entrepreneurship. One of the things that we've heard from different groups, and we're still having these discussions and doing our research on, is can we help small business initiatives, and particularly the entrepreneurial development effort, as we've seen it happen here in York County. And the group that comes to mind is the Gravity Center.
Yes.
We're getting some information and feedback on what they have seen and what the need is for possible example opportunities
Mhm.
that may be a investment in their efforts, collaborative with matching dollars maybe from other groups, that says this helps them accomplish their mission. The pot gets bigger because we're at the table helping them.
Mhm.
So that grant program would again be a performance grant, be metrics and reporting and all that stuff. So those are the three top considerations. Then there's other stuff. It was talked about before, and this would have to be further reviewed with management, I think, about, okay, is there a potential for, if funds are at a high enough level, does it make sense to put funds from this pot of money over into our operations for our economic development department? I know Spartanburg County does it to their nonprofit implementation group called One Spartanburg. I also know Richland County does some things. So, there's things to look at, but do you do it immediate? Do you phase it in? And how do we plan for that? If that's something that we'd want to recommend and consider at
So
some
is that
point.
the Economic Development Department funding, is that where we use the money that you've got to fund your department?
That's
Fund
correct.
the cost of the
So that's,
department? Okay.
it's worth diving in. I mean, I've been having conversations, and there's different nuances and things that we want to consider. So just, we need time a little more to flesh that out.
Yeah, That's when I think about next year's budget. You know, hopefully we can free up 600 grand from the thing Watts is working on in his committee right now annually. And if we can pay for the economic development
No pressure.
department out of that fund, that'll free up. I mean, I'm just trying to look at ways next year's money where we can,
But nobody heard that on that recording.
So,
go through next year's budget with that millage increase. But I think that bullet at the bottom on the top, that is something Mr. Hudspeth and I both are very supportive of. We're going to continue to do some look into that until next
what
year.
I'd also
You shouldn't bring that.
What I'd also say is under the targeted marketing studies or market studies, you have what Watts talked about, but you also have maybe opportunities if it was something
Sure.
council wanted to support over affordable housing studies, quality of life, rails to trail study, agritourism studies. Little special in nature, but those are the things that these kind of funds can help support. Speculative industrial buildings, I wouldn't recommend at this time, but you know, we have put money towards.
So this is all good, and this is the thing, sometimes I feel like, you know, we have great conversations and great, you know, ideas here, but I think we need to take the next step on this thing here to say, all right, y'all go back and bring us back some stuff here so we can get this in motion here. My thought would be, I think we should go ahead and maybe do a vote to say we would recommend you coming back to us, you know, with ideas and thoughts around how we can move forward with some of these things.
So I'll go back to the workshop, and that's
Yeah.
just to reiterate what Chairwoman said. is
Yeah.
Let's bring it back to the workshop if I'm incorrect in that. And that
Right.
The whole council, but yes, to support.
Yeah,
If you're comfortable with these bucket areas and the focus areas,
Yeah.
that's how we took away that conversation. That's where we've been
yeah.
putting our time.
I think to me, I think we put a stake in the ground and say, let's do a vote and say, you know, please go ahead and move forward to bring us back some stuff on this.
Okay, that works.
Allison's been quiet. I'm interested in what she's thinking.
I'm just thinking that we were hearing this first and probably not making a recommendation to council. So you're saying just vote to bring it, it's time to bring it to council. Is that what
Well,
you're saying?
I would say do a vote for them to come back with some thoughts, which they would bring back here. We would then.
To committee
To
again.
committee again.
Okay.
All right, and then we would go ahead, but I think we need to put a stake in the ground here to say, we would request you guys to start bringing back some real tangible
Yeah.
plans that we could recommend individually.
Not to get ourselves in a pinch with the chairwoman,
Mhm.
but I would, because she asked for us to come back to the committee and
Mhm.
with details about all these areas. So if you're comfortable with these
Mhm.
categories, your recommendation of support for these to then go to full council in workshop setting, to reiterate, this is support, you're supportive of this focus.
Mhm.
That
Okay.
would be-
So
No,
are you
that's-
gonna give a little more detail in
Yes,
that workshop?
absolutely.
Yeah, they
So
would,
that's-
right.
I think that's what you're asking
That's
for,
what I'm
is more
asking for.
detail.
That's basically.
What I wanted to do here today was just give you an update that
Okay.
Yeah.
we're drilling in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Giving a little, we're gonna talk a little bit more of the finer details, and then hopefully hear too from some of these potential partners that we
Yeah,
could consider to maybe even have them come in.
Okay.
If we have to have conversations with them, even out of this committee at some point.
Okay.
But, and you're not talking about doing anything in this year's budget. We're talking about next year's budget, Kevin? Because this year's done
This year's
pretty much.
budget's-
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So let me,
Well, this
and
money,
this is the uniqueness about this. So this is a fund that
It's existing.
it's
It's
existing.
existing.
So
Yeah, so-
if
Right.
some plan were to
There's
be developed and
flexibility there.
approved by council and say, yep,
Right.
you're gonna allocate funds. Now, there's ways you could do that. You could say, and this is how it's done in other counties, that, okay, there's a budget request under budget season,
Mhm.
or there's an allocation.
So you're saying it could be done anytime? Is that?
It could.
It's a recurring revenue stream. And there's some money in the bank, is how I look at this over here, but I'll just interject this. This is just my personal belief. I don't like the idea of taking tax dollars and having y'all decide how to quote unquote invest that, or to give it here, give it there. I just fundamentally don't like that. I believe, using it to reduce taxes or reduce the tax burden. I'm a big free market guy, and I think the government needs to try to stay out of the way. I don't like the idea of picking winners. And some small business, I'll give an example. Joel had a group of people come to him to develop stuff around right, e-gaming. They got some funding to round up themselves, and it's in the process of taking off. I don't want the government, I don't want to go take somebody's tax dollars and use it to start a business up, or to give somebody an opportunity to start a business, because how do you do that fairly? Then you're getting in the game where you're picking winners and losers. I personally don't think it's a good idea to take tax dollars and do that with it. To reduce taxes, to incentivize people here, and, you know, the buying some land, that has to be a heck of a situation where it's an absolute no-brainer. You know, like the Knight Stadium property, how long has that sit there waiting to be developed now? 30 years? You know, I mean,
Why are you looking at me?
I'm just-
Because you're the one that's been here that long too. You've been here as long as the
to play
Cato
investment
land.
game with taxpayers' money is something that, you know, more liberal entities freely do with taxpayer dollars. I personally don't think we need to try to be investing, you know, council wasn't elected to invest the taxpayers' money. You were supposed to use that money to run the government and to stay in what businesses. That's my perspective on it.
I want to challenge you just quickly.
So-
I'm not saying there's not, let me finish what I say, there's not an opportunity where there might be a site that might make sense where we're the ones that can do it. But that needs to, I think that's a very unique, would be a very unique circumstance. But to develop some program where we're taking tax dollars from all over the county and we're picking the winners and losers who get money on that, I just think is, to me, not the role that local government should have. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think there's a component of economic development as part of any county, any area. It's all in how it's structured, and if and I understand what you're saying.
That's the
I get it.
feed-loo aspect of it.
You know, I understand. But I think, yeah, and look, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying there's a component of economic development that I think that we, as elected officials, we work through those ideas and thoughts, right, that are there, and what's presented, and what for the good of the community makes sense based on what the recommendations of economic development is. I mean, understood your concern, absolutely. I just think there's an economic development component that we have to respect, and we have to be able to maximize, so, you know, we can at least make the best opportunity for the public from a growth perspective. So anyways, that would be my thoughts. I know you had something to say.
Kind of the same thing you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, we're doing the same thing on a larger scale with a business that's gonna have, one business is gonna have a huge impact. And I hear you're picking winners and losers potentially. Another reason why I said maybe let's be specific in the industries, the cutting edge industries that we'd like to have in our community that give us the higher wages, they meet certain criteria, right? But, you know, Silfab, $150 million impact. If you had 10, $15 million buildings, developments that were successful, right? You got the same effect, and you didn't give up $750 million in taxes to do it either.
I think there's so much that's subjective in that, you know, when you talk about, you talk about small businesses, I mean, that's very subjective as to what is the definition. We had this discussion in a previous meeting. What is the definition of a small business? You know, we've defined these big companies that have come in and they are making huge investments, but when you get down to, I'm just going to give you another example. I mean, when you talk about Tom Smith and his investment in residential housing, his investment in York County has been huge. Are we going to incentivize that? That's not something we want more of. So we're kind of back to saying, and what I said in the beginning, and what you said, Watts, is what's the plan? What? Maybe not what we want where, but what do we want to incentivize? And I don't know that. I don't know that. I think small business is very subjective. I think good wages is subjective. I think there's so much that's subjective in the whole conversation that we're talking about. You know, personally, I think that paying for what you do is a very important part of this. I would love to see that part of this. I am not in favor of us determining, you know, the speculative industrial buildings. I think we haven't done well at that in the past. It makes me wonder if that's tied into the land where we need a plan, and now we can come up. We can spend some of this money. We can come up with our plan and put our building on it and get it approved and clear it and everything. I'm wondering if those two things are somewhat tied together. But I just I don't know. I think we have to be careful. And this money has been there and not used, and that concerns me. That concerns me too. It's like all of a sudden there's the talk of it, and we come up with a way to use it. So
So
Well-
can you flip the next, the slide you're presenting? Yeah. No, and I think in general, again, I think the ask here, and I must want to make sure I'm here, right, is that we have talked about this opportunity before, right? Let's open this door up. Let's see what they can come back with for opportunities. And, you know, at least let's, to me, I think we should go ahead and approve to come back to us with some additional recommendations. And I think that's important because we're not putting a stake in the ground unless we do that.
I'm a little shallow with protocol, but could David go back to Christie to say, okay, we did what you asked us to do, and we need to kind of take the next step, and then take the next step, come back to us and present it, and then go to workshop, so we're covering even more in the workshop.
But this would be.
I would say
next
the
step.
most efficient way, to be quite honest, folks, is
Okay.
us come up with our plan, we take it to the full council.
that's what I think too.
And get things going
Right.
in a manner that
Okay.
doesn't bog
Right.
down process.
Right.
So, Kevin, I respectfully disagree with you on so many fronts with what you've said, because if the industrial
I agree
land,
with you. Don't feel bad.
if the industrial land development was all right in the marketplace, then we would have developers who buy the land and then will sell it at a reasonable rate to get the projects that we've presented that want to buy that property. We've been shot down so many times because there's no one that's gonna sell those sites at a reasonable rate that then company X can come in and buy and build their own. They control it, they can tell.
You're saying a developer's going to buy the site?
No, developers
Just-
buy the sites, they control it, then they say, oh, well, we'll sell it to you, company X, but it's gonna be
That's the free
twice
market.
the time.
I mean, that's the free market. That's the
But,
definition
but
of
where
free market.
we have an opportunity to land the next good, big project, impact project for York County, and this is a dynamic in the rural areas, they have to do it. What we have to do is think about controlling the property, because the market is buying everything, and they're squeezing out any opportunity.
So we're going to compete
The free
with
market
free
is
market.
There will
squeezing
be
out
some
the government.
competition.
We're
And
gonna
this is where you
compete
get into
with the
where,
free market.
this
And
is,
this
this
is-
is borderline like,
and this is
the
a-
government controls of the industry. That's where we fundamentally diverge.
But Kev, yeah,
on
we
the
can have
free
that
market.
conversation
Well,
at some other time, because
yeah.
there is a need. There's counties as examples that have addressed those needs with situations that have produced great results.
I mean, if you look at counties like Richland County that just landed Scout Motors, they landed there
And
because
others.
they had a site that they could
Yeah.
buy from the public entity that
Gaston
wasn't
County.
controlled by a private developer. We don't have that opportunity.
Gaston County is another example.
So they would have, you don't think they would have bought it had it been controlled by a private developer?
No, it would
So-
have been carved up as a
No
business.
private developers were gonna
Yeah.
control that much
And-
acreage.
And I think this, I mean, there's a lot of discussion around, you know, and I think that, you know, everybody has their points that they bring to the table. I would just like to move forward to get a motion so you can bring back some thoughts and ideas to the council around this. Do I have a motion to move forward with
We
this?
have a motion to move forward for economic development to take the next step to prepare a presentation for full council and a workshop.
So,
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
It's unanimous.
Exec session, covered projects. You
I
still
do have one
time?
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if, going back to the first request with Park Place, if, not that I want to do this, I'm just asking, if, since we own the land, right?
Correct.
Y'all are gonna pay to clear the land, is that right?
If we could get this changed, there are funds in place that we could move towards that, yes.
But if we committed to building on the land, we, the county, committed to building, you're in economic development, y'all know what industry's looking for, and if something were ready, we'd probably have it leased or sold or whatever. We could look at that and develop it and build something on it, right? Phase 1 of 3 phases.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
so let's share with Watts, not right now, but just so you're familiar with the spec buildings that we've had in the past and what happened to those.
I've been through part of that conversation with Joel and
Yeah.
to save time. I know.
I mean, we really didn't do a great job of
I'm with you.
speculation.
I think the question would be what demand is out there for 50-foot ceiling heights, whatever they are, that people are looking for, the larger doors, the technology that you got forklifts that have enough room to maneuver and move product or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Demand and interest is lower in the west, but it doesn't preclude the idea that preparing a site helps it get to market when that customer fit does come.
And I'm not.
And that's what we're,
suggesting-
yeah,
I mean,
and that's what we're trying to address by the
If I were a gambler, I
clear.
wouldn't be building anything
Correct.
in the next year.
And that's what
to-
it took 6
with
years
this
on
unknown
that.
Well,
economy.
if I can
I'm
add
just
this and then I'll shut
bringing
up,
it
but
up.
that park is a harder sell. You know, we built that park because Cannon Mills was closing, as was Celanese, and York itself needed an industrial park. They did not have one.
Right.
That's late eighties. It's still a little bit of a harder sell, these days for us, so.
Sure.
And as far as the spec building there, you know, if you're on the interstate, I'm all for it. But when they were talking about that, we built 2 spec buildings in that park before that one. One was sold under construction, one sat there for 7 years. So do the math. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I was just asking the question just to have the answer.
Thank y'all for letting me
Yeah,
know.
yeah, but the maximizing the value of what you requested, yeah, 100% understood, absolutely. All right, do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
All right, what is the motion? Oh, go ahead.
Motion, making a
Right.
motion for us to go into executive session. To
Economic.
get an update on projects.
Excellent.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Thank y'all.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
See you.
Thank you.